Hi, I'd like to talk about chocolate, if you don't mind. Specifically, why American chocolate tastes so different compared to British chocolate. Is this video an excuse to eat chocolate? Maybe. Hi everyone, it's me. My name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 8 years. Now this looks like a kitchen, yes, but it is in fact in England. So just trust me on that one. Now I love taste tests. I've done hundreds of them here on this YouTube channel, trying British stuff, comparing it to what I know back home. And over the last 8 years, I've learned a lot. And one thing that stands out is the chocolate that I grew up on doesn't taste quite right, in the most polite way of putting it. British people who have watched my videos have been screaming this at me for years, and I am here to say, yes, you were right. So don't rub it in. But how can a product so straightforward like milk chocolate be so unbelievably different? That's what I want to find out. Now, first up, what is British chocolate like? I think we need a baseline comparison. What is a typical British milk chocolate really like? My personal favorite, I think the gold standard in milk chocolate has to be dairy milk. Leave a comment down below, Cadbury or Galaxy? I'll tell you what, there is a wrong answer. To be honest, any British milk chocolate is typically of a pretty good quality. For me, for dairy milk, it's creamy, it's chocolatey, it's sweet, but not too sweet. It is just a very good all-around nice milk chocolate. Now, growing up in Canada, we eat a lot of American products. I ate Hershey, specifically the cookies and cream. Delicious. And I never had a problem with it because that is all that I knew. That was what was available. That was what was accessible. That was what was at the convenience store. But when I did a little deep dive into this video, I didn't realize that chocolate is not the same country to country. Every country has their own preference when it comes to chocolate, and manufacturers go after that preference. So for instance, the Swiss like a really milky milk chocolate, so they have a higher percentage of milk to cocoa in their milk chocolate. Where in Belgium, they prefer a more darker chocolate, so their typical milk chocolate variation, their milk chocolate recipe has a different ratio between the cocoa and the milk. The more you know. Now the star of today's video, what about American chocolate? Typically speaking, right? Obviously there's different variations just like British, but typically speaking, what is American chocolate really like? Now, a lot of British complain that American chocolate, specifically Hershey's, that's like the big, I would say that's the Cadbury of America, if you don't mind. A lot of British people complain that American chocolate is very waxy, which, to be fair, is actually kind of reasonable to say. So there are a couple of ways our American chocolate differs from our Cadbury chocolate, and it's not in your mind because it is real. The difference is real. First up is the cocoa content. So both places have regulations on how much cocoa content there has to be in milk chocolate for it to be considered milk chocolate. So for our British chocolate, you have to have a minimum of 20% cocoa solids, okay? Regulated by law, you need to have at least 20, whereas America, you have to have a minimum of 10. The higher cocoa content in our British chocolate gives it a more sort of like intense chocolatey flavor compared to the sweeter American version, which brings us to our next point. Sugar content, which you may have guessed. There is a difference in the sugar content, and that obviously plays a huge role in the taste. American chocolate typically has a sweeter overall taste because typically it's gonna have more sugar to compensate for the lower cocoa. In contrast, the British chocolate has less sugar because it has higher cocoa, which kind of has its own sort of natural sweetness. I think Brits will notice if you ever go to the US, holiday, moving, visit, whatever, work, American food typically tastes sweeter. Americans typically prefer sweetness, so you'll notice it in the food. Even things like bread. I did a whole video on my channel about American bread. There is sugar in bread. Okay, so where that preference for like a bit more sweetness in just your general food, it makes sense that the chocolate, the candy, the sweets have a more sweet taste, because that's what people want. Next up, the difference between our two chocolates comes down to milk ingredients, and I found this one so interesting, so bear with me. Now, when it comes to British chocolate, okay, and the milk content, British chocolate typically uses liquid milk that is dried and caramelized, giving it a creamier, more pronounced milk flavor. The idea being is you can't just put liquid milk into chocolate because it will mess up the recipe. The extra water impacts the texture, so it's important that it is dehydrated to get a paste or a powder. British regulations state that milk chocolate cannot have less than 14% dry milk solids obtained by partly or wholly dehydrating whole milk, semi-skimmed or skimmed milk, cream, or from partly or wholly dehydrated cream, butter, or milk fat. There's a very clear guidelines of how much and what can it come from. Now, when it comes to milk for our American friends, I found this so fascinating. American chocolate typically uses a form of dried milk powder, which can result in a more acidic kind of taste because there is also an acid that I don't know how to pronounce. Butyric acid. And yes, I asked Google.
Butyric acid.
Now this acid, from my understanding, comes into play because the milk is intentionally broken down during the manufacturing process, yielding this substance. What was it called again? Butyric acid, which also helps make the chocolate shelf stable. Now, what's interesting about this is when I've talked about chocolate in the past, a lot of British people say, ooh, Hershey's tastes like vomit, tastes like sick. And I'm like, okay, drama queen, calm down. Have a seat. But to be honest, they're not actually wrong because butyric acid is present in vomit. Yes. Now, this isn't a new thing, okay? This isn't like, oh my God, Americans are crazy. This acid is in other things. It's added into other things. It's also in butter, okay? Butter is awesome. So that's not new. But the addition of this acid is responsible for some of that taste and some of that smell. The more you know. And as you can guess, there are a lot of regulations that are different between the US and the UK that make a different milk chocolate. Now, from what I read, the EU and the UK have stricter regulations when it comes to milk chocolate that typically results in a higher standard. I'm sorry, America. American chocolate has regulations, but there is some flexibility which may find manufacturers choosing cheaper options or minimal options to get a cheaper product, but quality might not be the same. Here is a bit from the FDA about milk chocolate. Wow, that's a lot of text. Here's some bullet points. Now, the FDA classifies what is milk chocolate? Well, it is a solid or semi-solid food made by blending chocolate liqueur, which is a thick, dark liquid made from cocoa beans, with certain dairy products, like milk or cream, and sweeteners, like sugar. Now, a couple of things that stand out, like we mentioned earlier, has to have 10% chocolate liqueur compared to the 20% minimum in the UK. It has to have 3.39% milk fat compared to the 3.5% milk fat in the UK. And it has to have a 12% total milk solids compared to the 14% milk solids in the UK. Now, the FDA also goes on to explain various like optional ingredients you can include, like nuts and that kind of stuff. And it also is very specific that your label needs to clearly show what's included, what the ingredients are, and that kind of stuff. Hi, it's me. And some red onions. If you like this video and you would like to support me directly while getting exclusive content, please consider joining me on YouTube memberships. There'll be a join button on all of my videos. You get a full-length bonus video every week, plus a bunch of other perks. In case that interests you, no worries if not. Hope you're liking this video. That's it. Now, it wouldn't be right to do this video without a bit of a taste test comparison, eh? Oh, also, the labels I found very interesting. First up, Cadbury. Cheers. Man, that's good. Cadbury, to me, it's creamy. It has like a really, this is stupid to say, it's a really nice mouth feel. It's chocolatey, but it's not too sweet. It's just like an all-around really good chocolate. But what I thought was interesting is the label is much more in-depth than the American label, which we will get to in a second. So the ingredients for our Cadbury dairy milk is milk, sugar, cocoa butter, cocoa mass, vegetable fats, emulsifiers, flavorings. And what I thought was really interesting is down below, it tells you that the milk solids is 20% minimum, but they actually have 23%. And the cocoa solids is 20% minimum. Obviously, this is like a pretty hefty bar. There's like multiple servings in each bar. I think I got this at Sainsbury's. I wanna say it was like £1.80 or something, for 110 grams. Delicious. An all-around good chocolate. Next up, Hershey's. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, especially in the last few years, these American sweet shops have been popping up on high streets. And honestly, it gives me the vibe, money laundering. Something sketchy is going on in these shops because they are so weird. Anyway, I was in Canterbury. There are now 2 new-ish American sweet shops which look to sell the exact same thing. They're very sketchy. The first one did not have Hershey's, went to the second one, all the same stuff except the addition of Hershey's. So I bought this tiny little bar that is all of 43 grams. I paid nearly £3 for it, a very sketchy shop, which probably stole my identity. If you were to buy the same bar at, say, Walmart, you're looking at like $1.17. But what does it taste like? This is actually really exciting because I haven't had this kind of Hershey bar in years. So I am actually kind of interested because this is like, I'd have this as a kid and I'd no problem, right? Cheers. I get it now. Oh my god! It does taste like sick. I've got goosebumps. Okay, wow, that is so fun and ridiculous. On one hand, I wonder, does it taste like vomit? Because in my head, I know that some of the ingredients kind of share properties with vomit. No, it actually does, and you can smell it, which I'd never. Okay, here's me apologizing. Over the years, Brits have always said, oh, it tastes like vomit, and I'm like, you guys are so dramatic, calm down. It does, it actually does. You don't necessarily notice it. No, you do notice it. I was gonna say, maybe you don't notice it unless you're like directly comparing it, but no, I notice it. Ah, what? I need a drink, hold on. The thing that I wanted to talk about as well was the ingredients list. So for our Hershey, we have sugar, milk, chocolate, cocoa butter, milk fat, lychee, I can never pronounce that, PGRP, which I googled it, it's like an emulsifier, natural flavor. What's interesting, it doesn't tell you percentages. It also just includes chocolate. What do you mean by that? And the thing that stood out for me, the first ingredient in this is sugar. The first ingredient in this is milk. I really didn't think the vomit thing was gonna be a thing, but you know me, I love trying this stuff. I can't believe it. So this has been a mini look into why American chocolate tastes so different to the British stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had fun. If you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, why not check out this one, Why American Bread is a Bit Strange. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!